Hey everybody, welcome back. This is JordanPictureMonk.com here with another tutorial for you. And this one has to do with Camera Raw. And it has to do with getting a HDR look just using one shot and Camera Raw. Now, this is not going to work if you shoot in JPEG. First of all, you won't even get this dialog box if you try to drag a JPEG into Photoshop. But you need to have a RAW file, and you need to be always shooting RAW, number one. You need to have a RAW file, and you need to have the ability to open it in Camera Raw for this sort of technique to work. So let's go and get started. So I'm going to take this sort of underexposed image, which as you can tell, I was basically exposing for the sky back here. I'm going to brighten all of this up, and I'm going to give it a sort of crunchy tone like you would see in some HDR. So let's go and get started. What I would do first is I would always enable my profiles for my camera and do my sharpening. Alright. And then basically I'm a huge fan of this shadow slider, if you don't already know that by now. So I'm going to crank my shadows all the way up. And you can see because we were shooting RAW, we still have all of this detail in there, even though it was this underexposed. So I'm going to crank my shadows all the way up. I'm going to crank my exposure up a bit just to get a little more detail in the cab here. Alright. And then so I'm losing some of this, and that's easy to bring back. We just bring down the highlights so that comes back. It will darken the photo a little bit here, but that's not a big deal. So we bring back the highlights. And you can, just doing those three things, we already have sort of an HDR look, or an HDR photo, actually, because we have high dynamic range from the lights and the darks. So this is technically an HDR photo, but we're gonna stylize it a little bit more. So I'm gonna crank up the warmth a little bit, and crank up the clarity. Now, when I crank up the clarity, that's gonna really give it more of an HDR tone like you normally see. So, and there you go. So you can tell it's more like a traditional HDR that you would see. Now, since we increased the exposure and the shadows, and it was so dark down here, if we zoom in to 100%, you're going to see a lot of this noise here. Some of that could be from my sharpening, just because we had to bring back a lot, but noise, not a big deal. Since we're shooting RAW, we can bring up the luminance slider here, and you can see it starting to go away. I normally don't mess with the luminance detail because that just takes away some of the noise reduction that we just did, but I will crank up the color a little bit. There we go. So now go back out to full. We have a pretty clean photo here. So we can keep doing some edits if you want to. I might just go ahead and crank the clarity all the way up just because. Let's see, crank the contrast up a little bit. Alright, so I do like the way that looks for this type of effect that we're given here. Might actually bump up the blacks so we don't have too dark in there. Alright, and let's go ahead and make it a black and white. So just the easiest way I'm going to do that is just drop these guys down. If I do that, I can't mess with the grayscale, I can't mess with the sliders here, but that's not, I don't really want to do that in this sort of photo. But we can make it just a black and white, or we can bump up the vibrance a little bit and then bump up the saturation. So we're starting to get more color in here, but not a lot. You can kind of see it's a little blue here. There's a little warmth going on up here. So I'll just crank up the vibrance a little bit more. Maybe back the saturation down a little bit. This kind of gives it a faded color look, kind of like that. So I'm going to increase the warmth just a little bit more. There we go. And that's about it. That's a kind of a one-shot HDR photo in Camera Raw and not doing anything else. Yeah, doing this sort of effect really works on stuff with textures. As you can see here, we have a lot of texture in the seat. We got a lot of rusted texture here, and especially in the glass. So that technique really works when you want to increase the clarity and get a lot of texture here. That's one way to do it. So hope you guys enjoyed that video. If you want to see any other things, any requests, go ahead and head on over to picturemonk.com and let me know, or leave a comment down below of what you wanna see. Like I said, go to picturemonk.com. We have a lot of articles, a lot of videos to help you guys out. So hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you next time.